ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وأحسن هدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue on the day of Sunday, September the 6th, well technically now, according to the Hijri calendar, is Monday night, 7:43 p.m., which coincides on the day of Muharram, well technically now with the 6th of Muharram. And don't forget everyone that Yawm Ashura, which the Prophet ﷺ had encouraged that one fast the day of Yawm Ashura, likewise the day before it. And if one was most complete, he could do all 3 days. That is about to start soon, Yawm Ashura, which will be in a couple of more days. So everyone try to attain information in regards to that, which inshallah, I hope I have time, I could discuss it a little bit. But Yawm Ashura is soon. It's not that, it's about, what was that? I think it falls on the Thursday or Friday? The Thursday? They say Yawm Ashura will be Thursday. So they recommended that everybody fast probably Wednesday, starting Wednesday. So inshallah everyone try to attain the reward of fasting on Wednesday, Thursday. And if you could do Friday, also do it together. طيب. So on this day of Muharram, which starts the new year, which is 1440 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. And we continue in Kitaab At-Tawheed, and we were speaking about the chapter of what they call Istighatha. Zakaria, you need a chair? You need a chair? You alright? I'll get you a chair later. طيب. In regards to Istighatha, as we wind down the chapter, towards the end of the chapter, of the Bab min al-Shirk, an yastaghitha bi ghayri Allah aw yad'u ghayra. And we said in the chapter, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, if everyone looks in their books, we talked about of Istighatha, and how this particular worship is only for Allah subhanahu jalla fil ula. And that to give it to other than Allah, this type of Istighatha, and we've been talking about Istighatha of worship. Not in what is not considered, not in the affair of what is not considered worship, as we'll talk about inshallah again. Don't worry. But Istighatha, as we spoke about, is a type of supplication, as we spoke about. It's a type of supplication. When one raises his hands and he's facing very great difficulty in his life, and he wants that difficulty to be removed. And as a result of it, one will turn to Allah when he has no one, when he doesn't have anyone to turn to. He's in a very extreme circumstance where he does not have any help or any way out. And like we talked about, it also could be a situation which is life-threatening. When a person raises his hands in dua, like we said, he raises his hands, or he say, "Oh God, save me," or "Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, save me." As the kuffar say, well, some of them commit shirk and they'll say, "Oh Jesus, save me." Or they'll say someone else, "Oh Wali, Abdul Qadir Jilani, save me." All of this is polytheism, which the Prophet ﷺ warned his ummah not to commit. For verily, if one is to commit it, then he has nullified his Islam and he has committed the most hideous and evilest of all sins that any human being could commit. We talked about the hadith, which is mentioned in the last part of the chapter. which is mentioned in the last part of the chapter, where it said it was mentioned upon At-Tabarani in his Mu'jam. I'm sure not, I don't know if it's a Mu'jam al-Saghir or al-Wasat or al-Kabir, but at any rate, At-Tabarani mentioned in his Mu'jam this particular narration that the great Imam al-Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah mentioned. Someone share with Zakaria. They have a book. Qurban, you have your book with you? Show Zakaria where we are. We're in the last part of the hadith. If you notice here, ma'ashal ikhwa, if you want, you guys can spread out. There's plenty of space. You don't have to be so tight together unless you guys were sharing a book. Oh, they're sharing a book. Okay. طيب. As far as this hadith, if you notice in the last part of the chapter, what does it say, everyone? It says, during the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it says there was a man who's a munafiq. We talked about the meaning of nifaq, right, everyone? We said nifaq is what? It's something of an affair. It comes from the word nafaq. As nafaq in the Arabic language also means tunnel. It means a tunnel. It means a tunnel, nafaq. Now, you'll find that if you go into a Muslim country, and when they're going under the tunnel, they say, nadkhul al-nafaq, nafaq. Why is the tunnel called a nafaq? Because under the tunnel it's hiding something, right, everyone? Whereas outside of it is something different. Nifaq is the same way. Nifaq or hypocrisy is the same thing. Hypocrisy is what? It's hiding something. He's putting in the front of something that's totally different and contrary to what's inside. And that's the reason why it's called, everyone, what? Nifaq. And we talked about how nifaq became present after the time of when the battle of Badr, when it took place. And Islam had became triumphant and became strong and it became dominant. And they became or manifested people with this type of sickness who wanted to live along with the Muslims and take advantage of the honor because they know they could not defeat them due to their domination, their power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given them. And as a result of it, like we said, there were people who came in the guise, or they came in the form of hiding disbelief but outwardly professing Islam. Outwardly professing al-Islam. Everything all right? Oh, yeah. And outwardly professing Islam. So what happened was, as a result of it, you will find that during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there's a whole surah speaking about it. As Allah Ta'ala has revealed a surah speaking about the munafiqeen. It was called Surah Al-Munafiqeen. It's a whole surah in the Book of Allah. And also likewise the Surah At-Tawbah or Surah Al-Bara'ah. You'll find all throughout the Quran, you'll find there's different surah speaking bits and parts about the munafiqeen, but those two specific surah really deeply speak about the munafiqeen, about the hypocrites, about their signs, about their statements, and some of their plots they made during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Surah At-Tawbah especially, and Surah Al-Munafiqeen, the surah of the hypocrites. Talking about the different types of harm they used to afflict the Muslims on the different types of statements. But the type of harm during the time of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was not a harm, it wasn't technically a bodily type harm. But however, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning after the Battle of Badr, when Islam became strong and dominant, what happened was they started to harm the Muslims by statements and little hints. And there was plots that was also made behind the scenes, as they say. As they say, wara al-kawalis, or tahta dahaliz, as they say in Arabic. Behind the curtain, and behind the caves or the crevices, or under the crevices. But there was certain things that were being done, and from them was certain statements that were made that was harming the Muslims. So it was mentioned this hadith, was some about the hypocrites harming the Muslims by statements, and giving little hints. As we talked about hypocrisy is something that is very tremendous in Islam. For one to hide his disbelief in his heart by outwardly professing Islam is something that is totally what? Totally dangerous and unacceptable. For the Muslim agrees, what agrees inwardly, it will manifest outwardly, and outwardly is supposed to agree what is inward. Point blank. But however, like we said, during the time of the enemies of Islam, those who are the inward enemy who's around you is more dangerous than the outward. That's why we talked about how Allah Ta'ala highly condemned hypocrisy and how they will receive a worse punishment than the kuffar as-surah, the outward, open, clear kuffar of the non-Muslims who are the enemies, that the munafiqeen will receive a worse punishment than them. Why? Because they entered their ranks and tried to destroy them from within. So those people who are the inward enemy who tried to blend in and they tried to come under the guise or the disguise of looking like you and impersonating you, those people are the most dangerous. So we said that hypocrisy, as we discussed in the last lesson, breaks down to two categories, right, everyone? We said that hypocrisy, the first type is i'tiqadi, hypocrisy of the belief system, where a person totally disbelieves in Islam. Inwardly, in his heart, he despises it. He rejects it. He doesn't accept it. He doesn't like it. I don't like it. I don't profess it. Inwardly. So that type of hypocrisy, like we said, nullifies one's Islam totally. That type of belief, like we said, is more evil and on a higher level of wretchedness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than just regular kufr. Why do we say that? Because of the treachery that comes along with it. For an enemy outside who's clear to you is not as dangerous as the one who blends in with you and impersonates you. That's why we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in his book, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ وَلَن تَجِدَ لَهُمْ نَصِيرًا. As Allah wa ta'ala says in his book, verily the hypocrites are in the lowest part of hell, and you will never find anyone to aid them. So the hypocrisy of the belief system nullifies one's Islam, generally, of course. That will nullify one's Islam, and like we said, that belief will land one in the hellfire forever in the lowest part. May Allah wa ta'ala protect us from that, and protect us from hypocrisy. For verily the lowest part of hell, as we described last class, we said about Abu Talib, the uncle of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, is in the lightest part. Is in the lightest part of hell, and despite of that, you'll find narrations where the Prophet ﷺ said when he seen him, he thought that he was in the worst part of hell, or the lowest part of hell. He said, I thought that he was the worst of those who were being punished, and he was the least of those being punished. He says, so if that's the case for a person who's in the lightest part of hell, what could you imagine of those who are in the lowest part of it? And not only in them being in the lowest part of it, but also being and dwelling in it forever. That is a situation, that is an affair which Allah wa ta'ala, and we ask Allah wa ta'ala to preserve us and protect us from. For munafiq is something dangerous. And their characteristics also likewise, we'll talk about, if we have time, and teach the people of minhaj or methodology, how the people of innovations likewise have similarities of the munafiqeen in certain aspects. But they try to blend in and look like the Muslims, but however, they're totally different and contradictory to what is correct. As you'll find Muslims there that wear a taqiyya or a kufi, as they say for lack of better words, and an izar and a thobe, and their belief system is totally different to what is correct and to what is pertaining to the aqidah to salaf. But you'll find that they have a beard, some of them have a long beard, some of them wearing their thobes above their ankles, some of them they're wearing a ghutra, or they wear a scarf on their head, or shamagh, or the scarf on their head, and they're wearing nice thobes, and some of them dye their beards with henna, looking like the people of the sunnah, exactly. However, their belief system is totally contradictory to what's correct. As we'll talk about and discuss how some of the people of innovation and upon deviation have similarities to the munafiqeen. As we'll talk about that, inshallah, with certain deviant sects in which we'll, inshallah, I hope we'll be able to discuss, and from them during the time of the Imam Ahmed Imam Ahl Sunnah, which was the deviant sect called the Lafdhiyah, which we'll talk about inshallah. The Lafdhiyah, who used to use words, and those words will allow them to be with the people of falsehood. If they wanted to change their color, they could be with the people of the truth. And they will use certain statements to blend in with both sides. Isn't that not a similarity? It's a similarity to hypocrisy. But at any rate, for what we say, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, the hypocrisy of the belief system is the most dangerous. Why? Because it will nullify your Islam. Your Islam is nullified. The second category, as we said, what everyone? We have nifaq amali, hypocrisy of the actions. Hypocrisy of the actions, what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had explained. In the authentic ahadith of the narrations, we said, alayhi salatu wasalam, ayatul munafiq thalath. As we talked about, which is in the Sahihain and the Bukhari Muslim, where the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned it said, ayatul munafiq thalath. The sign of a hypocrite is 3. In another narration, if you gather it together with the other one, it's 5. إذا حدث كذب وإذا وعد أخلف وإذا اؤتمن خان وفي رواية إذا عاهد غدر وإذا خاصم فجر. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said that the sign of a hypocrite is 3. And we're talking about of the actions. The actions. As we said, the Messenger of Allah described nifaq, there are also characteristics. But that person that has a characteristic, is he outside the fold of Islam? Everyone? Is he or not? No, he isn't. However, as the Messenger of Allah ﷺ explained, that whoever has one of these characteristics, then he will never cease to have a characteristic of hypocrisy until he leaves it off. But if he has all these characteristics, then he's a pure hypocrite. And then the Messenger of Allah ﷺ explained it by saying, what everyone? If he speaks, if he says something, he lies. So lying is a characteristic of hypocrisy. إذا حدث كذب وإذا وعد أخلف وإذا اؤتمن خان. And if he promises, he breaks his promise. It's another characteristic of hypocrisy. And if he's given a trust, he betrays his trust. He's proven to be untrustworthy, unreliable, and perfidious, and treacherous. And in another narration, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned it said, إِذَا عَاهَدَ غَدَرٍ. If he's made a treaty or trust or a pact, then he breaks that also. And if he argues in a very impudent, disrespectful, unacceptable, irrational behavior in the time where a dispute takes place. That's also the sign of a hypocrite. So one should be very careful even when he engages inside of what? Inside of a dispute, if an argument takes place. You still have to maintain boundaries. You can't just lose your cool and say, oh, that's just how I am. No, you need to rectify that. That's a problem. The Prophet ﷺ said that's a sign of hypocrisy. For you to start cursing and running your mouth and saying anything out your mouth is something totally unacceptable. You need to get some control over yourself because it's unacceptable as a Muslim. So we said, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that the signs of the hypocrites, the narration the Prophet ﷺ mentioned it said that there were 3, but if you add it with the other one, we've given and we gather what? We gather 5. So, having a characteristic of hypocrisy is something not easy. So one should try to rid himself of those characteristics by asking Allah for help and removing these type of sicknesses from his heart. Because one does not want to die in a state where he has a characteristic of hypocrisy with himself. That's something not easy. So what we said, Ya ma'ashal ikhwa, this is briefly explaining what hypocrisy is. So you have the first category, which is what? I'tiqadi, and then you have the second category, which is what? Amali. You have the belief system, which is totally nullifies one's Islam. Then you have the second category, which is what? Amali, which is of the actions, which, like we said and explained, the different characteristics of hypocrisy. We said during the time of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ that the munafiqeen used to harm the Messenger of Allah and the Sahaba, not a bodily harm, but by some of their actions as far as what they used to do behind the scenes, or what the statements they used to make. Like, for example, what was mentioned in Surah Al-Munafiqeen, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, where Allah Ta'ala mentioned in his book, he says that the hypocrites used to say, لا تنفقوا على من عند رسول الله حتى ينفضوا. And another ayah, before that ayah, he says, يقولون لئن رجعنا إلى المدينة ليخرجن الأعز منها الأذل. He says that the hypocrites used to say that if we were to return back to Medina, he says the most honorable will cast out the most despicable. Who are they speaking about? They were speaking about the most honorable being themselves, and the most despicable is the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and the Sahaba. And he said when we return to Medina, he says the most honorable will remove the most despicable. So those are the type of statements that they used to what? Say behind the curtains. And they used to try to find people with the same sickness to try to plant the seed in them likewise and then spread it. During the time of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he had to deal with them in a certain way. There was a different type of way. He couldn't just outwardly what? Attack them. From them, at the head of the hypocrites was Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. And he was considered the Rasul Munafiqeen. Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. Considered the Rasul Munafiqeen. During the time of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he was the head. And they used to make these type of statements. The Messenger of Allah had to deal with them in a certain manner. It wasn't just an outward attack. The Messenger of Allah had to deal with them in a certain way and with a different type of siyasa shar'iyya, as they call it. A legislated type of political way of dealing with them. So no one should alleviate and say, no, there's no, we just got to be straightforward in everything. No, there isn't. If you read a book that Shaykh al-Islam entitled Siyasa Shar'iyya, he says the legislated political way from the Kitaab and Sunnah. You can't just take things head on all the time. No. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ had to deal with them in a certain way. And during that time, he had to deal with them in a manner that wouldn't cause, where it would afflict or cause some type of, if you want to say, damage in regards to the reputation of Islam by the kuffar, by the non-Muslims outside looking in. Where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, if he would have killed them or if he would have did something to them, they would have mentioned and said something to the effect, look at Muhammad killing his own companions, which would cause damage as far as with the reputation of Islam, of what the non-Muslims would hear, based upon what was taking place inwardly. Because we said the Munafiqeen were where? They were amongst the Muslims. They were in the ranks. They was trying to destroy them from within. So he had to deal with it in a certain way. You understand, everyone? The reason why I'm saying that is because that's also part of the hadith here. It's also part of the explanation. So we said also likewise, if you go back to the hadith, it says there was a man from the Munafiqeen that he used to harm the mu'mineen. And we said that they used to harm them with statements. They used to harm the believers by either by statements or giving little hints. Well, they were cowards too. They used to do it behind the scenes, as they were cowards. Some of them said, and they said that it was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. It says, قُومُوا بِنَا نَسْتَغِيثُ بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. قُومُوا بِنَا. He says, stand with us. Let us make istighatha with the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. Let us make istighatha with the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. So what did the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم mention here? He said, verily, istighatha is not sought with me. What did we say the meaning of istighatha is, everyone? It's a type of supplication. What type of supplication is it? A dua when a person raises when he's facing severe stress and adversity in his life, and severe hardship, and something life-threatening, and you're seeking relief. That type of relief is istighatha. It's a type of help, but it's a specific type of help when a person is in a severe or under a severe circumstance, where he has nothing to turn to or no one or anything to turn to except Allah to save him and relieve him. That's istighatha, and it's a type of supplication as we mentioned. So the word that was mentioned is, stand with us, let us seek istighatha with the Prophet ﷺ. Two things I'm going to mention in this regard, and from a benefit in which the great Imam Shaykh Uthaymeen even mentioned. He says what's intended by this hadith is, we could say, is two affairs. Number one, if you want to write this down, especially in your books, what's intended as far as in this narration here, When the Messenger of Allah said, إِنَّهُ لَا يُسْتَغَاثُ بِي, verily istighatha is not made with me. They said upon the first thing is to say, remove or negating that istighatha. When the Messenger of Allah negated it, he negated it from the aspect of closing the doors off of what, everyone? Of polytheism. And having mannerism as far as in the actual what? The verbal words or the usage of the words that were being used. What do we mean by that, everyone? That the actual wording, if not today or during his time, but later on, that the statement, shaitan could utilize it to what? Open the door of polytheism, where people will actually start making istighatha with the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the message of Allah, they say from what's intended when he said this, to shut the door. Like, do not say the statement. The wording is not what? The wording is not correct. But we want to ask everyone, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, during the time when he was alive and he was able and he was present, the istighatha of giving relief that is not connected with worship, wasn't it permissible? Not connected with worship. Wasn't it permissible? That's not connected with worship. Was it permissible for them to seek istighatha with him? Exactly. It was. Why? Because the Messenger of Allah at that specific time was what? He was present, he was alive, and he was what? He was able. He was able. So this negation of istighatha is not absolute in all cases. During that time. Right or wrong, everyone? During that specific time. But after the death of the Messenger of Allah, it's totally what? Totally rejected. It's not permissible. Right, everyone? After his death. But during his time while he was alive, the type of istighatha which is not connected with worship, has nothing to do with worship. The type of istighatha which is permissible, which was in the capability of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from him being present, alive and able, he was able to what? To do it. But however, upon the first meaning that we're saying, he wanted to close the door of polytheism by telling them, do not use this type of statement. Don't say, innahu yustaghathu bi. Verily, istighatha is not made with me. So, that was the first instant in which you'll find that which is intended about this particular hadith. طيب. A second meaning you'll find that Ahl al-Ilm mentioned, with the great Imam, Shaykh Uthaymeen even mentioned this regard. He says, there's a second meaning. He said, the negation of the Prophet ﷺ, negating istighatha, he says returns back into this specific case only. What does he mean by that? Before you write this down. Meaning of what we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And I'm going to read quickly what he said. In this specific case, he says, فَإِنَّهُ يَكُونَ عَلَى الْحَقِيقَةِ عَلَى النَّفْيِ الْحَقِيقِ. That the Prophet ﷺ كان يعامل المنافقين معاملة المسلمين ولا يمكنه حسب الحكم الظاهر للمنافقين ينتقم من هذا المنافق انتقاما ظاهرا إذ إن المنافقين يتسترون. This is exactly what we just said. That during the time, he says that the message of Allah was just negating, they said this is the second meaning. He was negating istighatha in this specific case. He says why? He says because the Messenger of Allah during the time, or during his time, he used to deal with the hypocrites, how he would deal with the Muslims. Like I just said, what did we say, everyone? He had to deal with them in a what? A certain way. He said he was not able, he had to deal with them according to what they manifested. And what they manifested openly and professed was what, everyone? Islam. So he had to deal with them in a certain way. So he had to deal with them of what they manifested, meaning for the hypocrites, that he had to be aware not to take retribution from these particular hypocrites. A retribution which was, or a type of punishment that was open, or a type of scold or reprimandment that was done openly. He couldn't do it. Because the hypocrites used to what? They used to hide. They used to be conspicuous and they used to hide themselves. So upon this, when the Messenger of Allah said this, what was intended is, I'm not sought istighatha in order to rid yourself of these particular hypocrites. Meaning as if he's saying, I have to deal with them a certain way. So istighatha is not sought with me in this specific case. So that's what's intended of the second affair, of what Ahl Ilm mentioned. So it could be either what? The first one, which is closing the door off the shirk, or the second one, by saying specifically in this case, istighatha is not made with me. Because the hypocrites had to be dealt with in a specific what? A specific way. Is it clear, everyone? طيب, let's read the masail. Let's read the matters. Who wants to read them? Alhamdulillah, got to the end of the chapter. Tafadal. AbdurRazzaaq, read the masail. Istighatha. I'll teach you what they're doing. What are they speaking about here? It says that, it says basically, we were discussing before in the beginning of the chapter. We said that dua, every dua is what, everyone? I'll say it again. Hold on, slow down. Every istighatha is dua. Not every dua is istighatha. Is it clear or not? I'll say it again. Every istighatha, every istighatha, as far as the istighatha worship, every istighatha is what? Is dua. But is every dua istighatha? No, it isn't. That's basically what he's saying here. He's saying, if you look in the title of the chapter, he mentioned istighatha, then he mentioned dua at the end of the title, if you look in your books. Did he or did he not? The author. He mentioned istighatha in the beginning of the chapter, and he said from shirk is to make istighatha with other than Allah, or invoke or call on other than Him. طيب. So he's saying that between them is affairs that are specific and affairs that are more general. Basically, dua is more general, and istighatha is what? Is specific. Dua can be in a time where you're in a time of stress, and it could be at a time of ease when you make a dua for your brother. So it's more what, everyone? It's more general. Right or wrong? It's more general. But istighatha is a specific type of situation where you're seeking relief. You want some hardship to be removed, or some difficulty or adversity to be removed. Right, everyone? So that's what we're saying here. So that's what is intended by the first mas'ala, or the first matter that he mentioned here at the end of the chapter. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Is everyone with me? Don't worry, Zakaria, if you're not understanding, you will. All you have to do is just keep coming. Just try to understand them as much as you can, but don't worry. Everything is going to start clicking. Trust me. طيب, second matter. The tafsir of the statement of Allah subhanahu jalla fil ula, وَلَا تَدْعُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكَ وَلَا يَضُرُّكَ. Everybody reading the matters? I think you guys are getting a book. There should be extra copies in all of us. Just try to get one after the class. We should have some in there, I think. Anyway, as it says in tafsir in the ayah, do not invoke besides Allah what does not benefit you nor harm you. What do we say about that, everyone? Do not invoke. We said the tafsir of that firstly, dua breaks down to two types. You have dua of what, everyone? Of worship itself, and dua of what? Of asking. Right, everyone? Did we say that? Jayyid. We also said in the last part, what is do not invoke besides Allah what does not benefit you nor harm you. Do not benefit you nor harm you. What did we say about that statement? That's called sifatun kashifa. La mafhuma laha. We said that about 2 weeks ago. That part of the ayah is called sifatun kashifa. La mafhuma laha. Meaning, that's just a clarification that Allah has put an emphasis on that which you call on other than Allah will not bring you any benefit nor will bring you any what? Any harm. It was just mentioned for clarification, for emphasis. Not justifying to say that if this thing does benefit you or harm you in your life, then you can what? Worship it. La. That's not what's intended. Rather, what was intended is giving emphasis or putting more emphasis and clarification on what's mentioned in the ayah. So do not extract from the ayah the opposite of what you would think. That if this thing does benefit me, even if it does harm me, if it does bring some type of harm, or if it does bring some type of benefit in my life, then I can worship it. La. That's called صفة كاشفة لا مفهوم لها. يعني وننفي بذلك مفهوم المخالفة. مفهوم المخالفة منفية هنا في هذا السياق من الآية, as we know. As I said, like we talked about, what is intended or negated here is what they call, I don't want to confuse all of the young brothers, just keep it the way it is. Anyway, so we gave the tafsir of the meaning of do not invoke besides Allah who will not benefit you nor harm you. And the reality of all these affairs that is worship besides Allah, in truly reality, they do not benefit you nor do they harm you. Whether they be from the sun, the moon, the stars, Jesus the son of Mary, or the awliya, so-called as they say, the wali fulan or wali so-and-so, whether they be from the followers of the Sufiya, nothing that's created can harm you or benefit you as far as in the affairs of worship whatsoever. Nothing. And in reality, if they do, if it is as if their answer, if you call on them, is you'll find there's some people that say that I called on Buddha, or I called on Isa, Jesus the son of Mary, and my dua was answered. You'll find some of them that do say that. And we talked about before, all of this is connected with one of two affairs. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered it by preordaining that matter at the time when you called on that particular deity. So in actuality, Allah answered it. However, in order to mislead one and increase in misguidance, making him think or she think that what he invoked or she invoked or worshiped, it did answer them, and their relief came, and their help or their aid came in their particular life. Like when I called on Jesus, my life became so much easier. My life turned for the best. Like we said, number one, either Allah Ta'ala answered your prayer, making you think that it was what? That particular person or that particular idol or that particular thing answered your call. Or it was from the shayateen. Or from the shayateen. In which you'll find like some of them having abilities in order to what? In which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed them to speak. Like for example, I called on so-and-so and the dead and a voice spoke to me from the grave. I heard a voice from the one in the grave or the one in the dead or one from the dead. I heard their voice. They spoke to me. So that means that what happened was what? What I'm doing is what? Is true. We said that Shaykh al-Islam mentioned in the stories of certain people where they said that the shayateen can climb in the grave or go in the grave or the dead one. And they can also, likewise what? They can disguise themselves or put forth a voice disguising of the one that's dead. In order for one to what? Fall into polytheism. So the shayateen know this, that the most evil sin that the human being could commit is shirk. So in order to get him to commit shirk, he will even what? Go to the point where he will even speak out of the dead, out of the grave person, the one that's dead, and bring a voice and respond to him until the person starts to pray to them as if they pray to Allah. Whereas in that instance, they start to worship it. All these things and the tricks are tricks that are made by the shayateen in order to mislead Bani Adam down the road of polytheism. All for him to fall into it, so he can fall into the most evil, most greatest of oppression and injustice that a human being can commit. Making voices and talking. Like we said during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when the message of Allah ﷺ had came, and before he eradicated and decimated all the different idols that was being worshipped, one of those idols used to talk, used to speak. The idol called the Uzza used to have a voice. They used to say, when they used to worship it, they used to hear a voice that would speak out. And they said during the tafsir of that particular idol of the Uzza that the shayateen actually what? Used to speak. They used to go to that particular idol, and they would what? They would come to the idol and they would speak from the idol, thinking that the idol was actually talking, but in actuality was what everyone, it was the shaitan. It was a devil or shaitan emulating that particular, or saying, or speaking verbally to the people who are worshiping it. All of that in order for the people to fall inside of what? Polytheism. So either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer their prayer or answer their dua answer their supplication, or the shayateen will speak to them. And that's exactly what the malaika of the angels will say on the day of resurrection. The angels will say, as we talked about last class, that Allah will bring the angels forth on the day of resurrection and say to them, did you command the people to worship you also? Allah will say it, because Allah on the day of resurrection loves to establish the proof. Allah loves them. And that's what He's going to do to everyone, to all of us. May Allah save us. Allah loves to establish the proof, and He's going to establish the truth on the day of resurrection. Establish everything. And Allah has given us warnings all in these texts that we read. All these texts that we read, we know verbatim exactly what's going to happen on the day of resurrection. It's explained clearly. And it's authentic. We don't have changed, warped stories like how the rest of the different professions and religions have, when man-made or man incorporated something in the story. But the authentic narration is that we know that Allah Ta'ala will bring the angels, and the angels, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will establish the truth. And He will even make the angels profess what's the truth. By them saying, Allah will say, وَيَوْمَ نَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَنَقُولُ أَهَؤُلَاءِ إِيَّاكُمْ كَانُوا يَعْبُدُونَ. Did the people used to worship you? Meaning the angels. They're going to say, سُبْحَانَكَ أَنْتَ وَلِيُّنَا مِن دُونِهِمْ بَلْ كَانُوا يَعْبُدُونَ الْجِنَّ أكثرهم بهم مؤمنون فاليوم لا يملك بعضكم لبعض نفعا ولا ضرا ونقول للذين أشركوا أو نقول للذين ظلموا ذوقوا عذاب النار التي كنتم بها تكذبون. On the day of resurrection, it says in the ayah, the angels will say, glory be to you, you are their protector besides them. They used to worship the shayateen and the jinn. And the majority of them, meaning the people in this world, believed in them. So the jinn and the shayateen were the ones who were misleading the people. And even in the churches of the Christians, when you see them speaking in tongues, and you see them starting to speak in different, or now they say that the spirit has what? Jumped into me. Not realizing that a jinn jumped into you until you speak in some other so-called other language. This is all from the works of the shayateen in order to mislead the people thinking what they're upon is correct, but in actuality it's only what? Misguidance. Now, the next matter. I'm sorry, everyone. طيب. The second thing that the great Imam, al-Shaykh, he said, هذا هو الشرك الأكبر. He said that this is major shirk. What's major shirk, everyone? Not only istighatha for other than Allah, but dua generally for other than Allah is major polytheism. Stay with me, Zakaria. So that's major polytheism. So dua in general for other than Allah is what, everyone? Major polytheism. If you raise your hands and you say in your supplication, O Muhammad, it's major polytheism. O Jesus, the Son of Mary, major polytheism. O sun of the moon, O stars, belief in zodiac signs, belief in the zodiac signs, raising and say, O so-and-so from the dead, hear my call, answer my prayer, hear me, what I'm saying. You call on them, you raise your voice and do this, you have done the most hideous and most horrific of all sins if you do this. You've done the most hideous sin that any human being can commit, and the most ultimate injustice upon yourself. And if you die in that state, like we said, nothing that you did in this world will even matter. Will have any relevancy. You'll be totally irrelevant. Everything you did of good will be totally irrelevant if you do that act. Is it calling you there now? I don't hear him calling. Is he calling there? Oh. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Ashhadu la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمود الوسيلة الفضيلة وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعدته. طيب I'll teach you that, guys, about the ibadah. What you're doing as far as in studying these this books is better than voluntary prayer. The fact that what you're doing is seeking knowledge is better than voluntary prayer. This right here is better than that. You'll find that the Salaf and Athar of the Salaf, this is what they used to do. And not to worry, but a person, if he's in the middle of taking ilm, he doesn't have to stop to do a voluntary prayer. This is better than that. This right here is ibadah. What you're doing, learning Kitaab At-Tawheed is ibadah. This is worship. And this type of worship is better than voluntary worship. I'm not saying that directed at Amir, because he might say, man, why you put me on blast? That's generally speaking. You understand, everyone? What you're doing right now is ibadah. It's a form of ibadah already. Rather, this ibadah is more virtuous than that ibadah. Is it clear what I'm saying? It's more virtuous. جيد. طيب. So the fourth matter was mentioned, which is what everyone. تفضل. What's the fourth matter? Oh, I think Qurban wanted to read just Brody number. Go ahead. No, you read the next one. Go ahead, Jamar. Now 40. We have 10 more minutes or 13 more minutes. 15 more minutes or 14 more. Okay. He said, I'm sorry, Jamar. Say it one more time. Say, uh-huh. No, what it should read is the most righteous of people. That if they do it to please other than Allah. What is he talking about? What he's talking about is, everyone, it's based upon what was mentioned in the ayah. That verily, if you do it, you will be from the polytheists. So the Prophet ﷺ has said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this addressment to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ was the most what? Righteous of people. He did. If you do that to please other than him, meaning you'll be from the polytheists, meaning if you do and participate and indulge in their worship, meaning out of compromise or cajoling them, or what they call bootlicking them, to bootlick. And you indulge in their worship basically to compromise, to think that you want to earn their acceptance. By compromising your worship for other than Allah, you will be like the polytheists. You will be from them. For doing this and what? For example, a person that worships the grave. فَدَعَى صَاحِبُ قَبْرٍ إِرْضَاءً لِذَلِكَ الْمُشْرِكِ. The person who's the person of a grave worshiper, that he wants to worship other than Allah in order to please another polytheist. If he does that, then he's a what? The person does this out of what they call cajolement, or to sell out, or to compromise, then you will be from the mushrikeen. You'll be from the polytheists, generally. And you'll find, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, for people who stand on their beliefs based upon the haqq, the non-Muslims lose respect when you compromise. A lot of people think they'll gain respect by you doing what they do, and especially in the affairs of worship. That they're trying to gain their acceptance. Acceptance is standing firm upon what you're upon, because they're going to stand firm on what they're upon. And they're going to get you to try to do what they do. So likewise, what earns respect is to be stand firm upon your belief, especially in the affairs of what's pertaining, especially in affairs of Aqidah. Never to compromise that. You'll find that a lot of the Muslims indulge in certain affairs in order to so-called gain the respect, so-called, or gain or earn the pleasure of the non-Muslims. For example, you guys have Christmas. We also can have something similar to that. We celebrate the Prophet ﷺ's birthday. Or doing all of that in order to gain their so-called what? Acceptance. Not realizing that they're losing respect. It's like, okay, you're just doing what we do. So why would I respect you and why would I want to be upon what you're upon? What's the difference? What's the difference between me and you now? You got your birthday for our prophet. You got your birthday for our prophet. So why would I want to be what you're upon? What makes me distinguished or difference between me and you? You understand, everyone? So all these affairs of compromisal, in which is mentioned and extracted from this particular benefit that the great Imam mentioned here and from the matters that's mentioned in the last part of the chapter, what do we say? If a person does it out of what? Compromisal. For a polytheist. In order to please him, then likewise, similar, he will become from the polytheists. Is it clear, everyone? طيب. What's the next matter? The fifth one. Then the explanation of the ayat, which is after it. MashaAllah. Which is what, everyone? If Allah touches you with some type of harm, no one can remove it except what? Him. And if he wants to give you or if he wants for you some type of mercy or good, there's no one that can hold back his bounty or his blessing. And he tests from his servants whom he wills with it, and he is Ghafur Rahim. طيب. We gave the tafsir of that, talking about how Allah Ta'ala harm or evil is not ascribed to Allah, right, everyone? We said that. Evil is not ascribed to Allah. However, Allah does allow what? Evil and good to happen. By what Allah intends in this existence. Not what He intends in the religion. Is it clear what I'm saying? What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends of this existence of good and evil has to happen. Affairs take place that Allah allows to happen out of His wisdom. As far as in this existence. By a wisdom or by infinite knowledge that Allah knows and we don't know. For example, what happens of evil? Why Allah, the ultimate evil, Allah created shaitan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created an evil. Shaitan himself, Iblis. A person would say, Tayyib, that's evil. Why would he create evil? Why would he create Iblis? There's so many benefits that Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned about this. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had ultimate knowledge of what? How to test His servants. And the different ways of people, how they're going to be in different levels in paradise. The only way that everybody will have their own level is based upon how everyone resisted a type of test or a type of what? Of examination or test that He had. So Allah had to make certain examinations and tests to see who would be what? Who would deserve a high level to a person that would be less or lower than that. That wouldn't manifest except through what? Through certain trials and tribulations and evils that takes place in this existence. From them is shaitan. From them is pain that we endure in our lives. We become sick. From them is loss of money. From them is loss of loved ones that we had in our lives. From them is from breakup from relationships with people who we love. Loss of loved ones. To see whether or not we will remain what? Upon what is correct. Or we will say statements that are what? Correct. Or do actions which are correct. Or will we turn back on our heels and start saying statements that are what? Displeasurable to Allah. Why this is how that happened to me? God, why you allow this to happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? You understand? Allah is testing you to see how you're going to react. Are you going to submit to His qada and His qadr and utilize what He put you in as of a circumstance to raise yourself out of it and be better? Take in consideration, this is to our youth, the people who had the hardest lives usually come out the best people because they know what it is to struggle and they appreciate when they come out of it. In contrast to people who already had a spoon in their mouth, usually they're the most ungrateful of people. Not all the time, but usually. Because they never experienced how it is to be rough or have rough times, to not grow up without a mother, or to grow up without a father, or to grow up without your parents, or to grow up from not people in your immediate family showing you love. Allah preordains those affairs. Usually those people come out stronger. And they come out people being leaders. And they come out with people being what? More focused and grateful for what they have. Why? Because they endured what was what? What was hard. They faced it. They seen it. They've been in the situation. So this is the reason why we teach in the youth this type of belief system. Why? Because this will be an incentive to bring you out of the predicament that you're in. Because a lot of youth out there is saying, why did I have to be born in this crack house? My mother was a crackhead. What did I do? Why was I brought into this world? And I'm brought into this type of circumstance where my father, I don't know who he is, and my mom is a crackhead. What did I do to deserve this? That's why we're learning what we're learning now. To answer to that question, that Allah allowed this to happen to you, to test you, to utilize it as a way to what? To now see how you're going to react. Are you going to let this now swallow you up so you can be the most wretched of people? Or are now you going to utilize this in order to be the best of people? Because like I said, the people who come from the worst backgrounds and the most broken of families, if they're sincere for Allah and genuine, Allah usually gives them tawfiq to rise out of it and be the best of people. And the most grateful of people because they tasted the times when it was rough. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So these evils Allah preordains and allows it to happen to certain people out of infinite wisdom. If you'll find that what happens usually with people who come from these type of backgrounds, they are usually the most strongest of people. They know how to endure. They know how to survive. They know what to do when times get rough. They know how to react. They know how to conduct themselves. In contrast to people who already had a spoon in their mouth usually, and like I said, it's not all the time. But usually those type of people, like we said, you'll find that they're always sometimes a little ungrateful. They don't know what it is to be rough or to come from a rough background without a mother and a father. Or when their father, they don't know who he is and their mom was a crackhead. Or these type of affairs. The reason why we're teaching this book of Kitaab At-Tawheed and Aqidah is to give you answer to those questions. That Allah allowed this to happen to you for a reason. Are you going to now utilize this test for you to fail it, or utilize it as an incentive to be a better person and a stronger individual? I'm even the person speaking to you. I'm just like you. I was growing up. My mom died when I was 15, breast cancer. I was kicked and I lived in a shelter. I know how it feels to be rough. I know that I've tasted it myself. My mother, I grew up with a spoon in my mouth. Yes, I did. I had my mother and father at one time. My mother and father raised me. Then at the time, all of a sudden, it changed. It just changed very fast. It changed fast. I just woke up one morning and my mother now is on the deathbed. And I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know where it came from. And my mother died right in front of me. On top of that. And my father kicked me out the house because he was an excessive alcoholic and he was a drinker. So don't think that I don't know pain. I know pain. And I was also likewise, my own sister dropped me off at a what? My own sister dropped me off at a what? Dropped me off at a shelter. My own sister. She didn't take me in. Dropped me off at a shelter. Bye-bye. I'm keeping my life and moving on. You don't think that's pain? That my own sister, my own blood sister, dropped me off at a what? At a shelter and keep it moving. I feel pain. I know pain. It's painful. I sat in the shelter crying. And I wasn't Muslim at the time, asking God, why did this happen to me? Why my mother removed, my father kicked me out, and my sister dropped me off, and now I'm here in the shelter? How did I get here? How did I come from an all right background to here? How did I get here so fast? But look to what happened. Allah preordained that I what? Accept Islam and Salafiyah. So some good came out of what I perceived to be evil. Allah allowed me that events that take place for it to be a reason for me accepting Islam, not only Islam, but accepting Salafiyah. And accepting the correct understanding of Islam. Because a lot of Muslims are deprived of that. And know how it is to what? To taste so-called defeat so I could be strong. So people want to know how, because I know everyone has been around me, knows that what? They know that AbdurRazzaaq is always what? You as a strong individual. Very strong. Why? Because I've been at the lowest of low. And I tasted defeat. And I know how it is to survive. And I know how it tastes and what it takes to be resilient. Resilient it's not about being knocked down. You could be knocked down 1,000 times. It's about whether or not you can get up to bounce back. That's what distinguishes people who are resilient to people who are failures, who utilizes their predicaments to put themselves in a deeper hole. When I got kicked out on the street, I decided to take on a decision that I was not going to utilize what's happening in my life to go down a certain road of destruction, whether it be criminality or being killed or being incarcerated. And that's not to talk about our brothers who are incarcerated. As I know, even my brothers, the most beloved brothers to me who are incarcerated. So I'm not talking about them. The most beloved, close to brothers to me who took care of me are incarcerated. Best brothers. The most sincere brothers and the best of brothers. Or brothers who are sincere. So it's not to condemn them. The best of people you'll find, like we said, they're the lowest of low of what the people perceive. They're grateful when they brought out of it because they know the pain. Right or wrong. But however, you utilize your situation to what? To come out of it. So when you climb out of it, you are what? You become the best of people. So don't now try to say that, why did I was born like this? Why this happened to me? Why my father leave me? All that. Allah allowed that to happen to you for a reason. To see if whether or not how you were going to what are you going to do? Even though Allah knows. How are you going to conduct in it? Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So that's what we say in answer to those questions, especially to our youth. Especially those who have done and have been through certain things that is perceived to be evil, but at the end you don't know what's at the end of the tunnel, what Allah has preordained. After I got kicked out in the street, I expressed Islam in Salafiyah. Then after that, Allah allowed me to be accepted in the University of Medina. Then after that, Allah allowed me to meet the Imam Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i. Then Allah allowed me to meet the great Imam Sheikh bin Baz. Then Allah allowed me to meet also Sheikh Rabi'. Allah allowed me to meet Sheikh Abdullah al-Bukhari. Allah allowed me to meet Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabiri and know who he is and he know who I am. All these affairs happened due to what? A different type of evil that might have happened earlier on in my life that led up to this. So that's what? That's good of what? There's no good after that. What more can you ask for? Living in the city of the Prophet ﷺ, making Hajj, Umrah, meeting the ulama, being upon true Salafiyah. What more can you ask for? You understand, everyone? So don't utilize your pain to go down a certain road of destruction. Use it as a motivation. That Allah used it as a test to test you. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So in regards to what we mentioned, it said, that's the tafsir of the ayah. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to touch you with some type of what? Some type of harm. Notice it says touch you, right? Notice it didn't say in the ayah what? Wants for you harm. What did we say last time? Exactly. The reason why I was mentioning this particular tafsir of this particular ayah is because it's to show that evil is not ascribed to Allah. So that's the reason why it was mentioned if Allah wants to touch you, not if Allah wants for you. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Is it clear? Jayyid. But there is an ayah that's frank, that Allah says if Allah wants for you harm. But however, Allah in certain ayats have mentioned in different wording to instill in us a belief system, which is what evil is not ascribed to him. And from those examples is here in this particular ayah. Is it clear? Let's read the next matter, then we got to wrap up. Say it again. جيد. It says كون ذلك لا ينفع في الدنيا مع كونه كفرا. He says that it being that it doesn't benefit in this world, despite of it being what? Kufr. كون ذلك لا ينفع في الدنيا. What is he talking about here? No. That Allah Ta'ala mentioned in his book. How does he say this? No. To show that none of what will benefit you at any affair or the aspect of polytheism, excuse me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in this ayah, who's the most astray of those who make dua to other than him? Meaning that there's no benefit in polytheism whatsoever. Hold on for 1 second. I think it's the ayah. No, I was right. That it says that there's no one that can remove it except him. Meaning that the person who's invoking other than Allah from those different idols, what everyone? That they will not benefit from their dua whatsoever. They're not going to benefit. Rather, they're going to lose out in this world because of that, and also in the hereafter due to their kufr. So that's the meaning, just to sum it up, so we can keep going. The seventh one, and we got to stop. Stop. Explanation of the what? The explanation of the thing. What's the third ayah, everyone? Where Allah Ta'ala says in his book, where it says, Ibtaghu inda Allahi rizq. He says that they do not provide for what? What's the ayah? Aywa. Fabtaghu inda Allahi rizq. Wa'buduhu washkuru lah. Ilayhi turja'un. And that's the ayah. Basically, saying about the provisions that what? That which they do, you evoke or that was worship other than Allah, they do not own for you anything or any provisions. I mean, they cannot provide for you. Seek your provisions with Allah. Worship Him and thank Him. And to Him until you be, and to Him you will finally return. Tayyib. That's what he's speaking about, that particular ayah. That is to show what, everyone? What did we say? Just to sum it up, I don't want to go too deep because we already mentioned that in the last class. We said that worship also opens up provisions, for one, right? Worship and also being thankful. To Him will be the final return, meaning, if you look in the last part of the ayah where it says, seek with Allah of the provisions. Seek with Him provisions, worship Him and thank Him, to Him the final return. You will also find that Ahl Ilm mentioned this regard in this ayah, that ibadah is a reason for entering paradise. Due to the fact that Allah said in His book, worship Him and also what? And thank Him. Meaning that will be your reason of what? Entering paradise. And we also talked about, from the benefits of that ayah, what did we say last class? Or a couple of classes ago? That if one wants his provisions, he should increase in his ibadah. Increases his worship. As worship is a reason for what? For one having his provisions increased and augmented. So if you want it to be augmented and increased, then carry out the worship of Allah and also let that be coincide along with that, which is of shukr, which is done by the limbs and the tongue and what? And the heart. And we also know the hadith, as we discussed last time. I have to stop because we got to pray. Where the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah said, Ya ibn Adam, tafarragh li'ibadati, tafarragh li'ibadati, amlaku qalba, amla sadaraka ghinan, wa asuddu faqrak. As it says in the narration. Oh, Ibn Adam, devote to my worship, I will fill your heart up with enrichment, and I will remove your poverty. And if you do not do so, it says, أَمْلَأْ قَلْبَكَ أَوْ صَدَرَكَ شُغْلًا وَلَا أَسُدُّ فَقْرَكَ. He says that if you do not do that, then I will what? I will fill your heart up with being busy, constantly chasing after more. And I will not remove your poverty. So we said that the ibadah is a reason for what? Increasement of one's provisions. And we said the best of provisions is what Allah puts in the heart of the ibad, of servants, which is what? Feeling contentment. We have to stop. And we'll just continue next class because there's a lot of more masail we have to cover. But I will stop here. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Any questions about the lesson? Any questions? No, there isn't any? Stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.